ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Om Asmat Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Guru Bhyo Namaha. Prapanna Parijata by Sri Guru Varavatsa Varadacharya, otherwise known as Nadadur Ammal. Srimati Ramanujaya Namaha, Prapanna Parijata, translated and edited by Sri Rama Ramanujachari. This little book was written by Vatsavarada Guru, more popularly known as Nadadur Ammal, who was the preceptor of Vedanta Deshika's preceptor, his Param Guru. I think he was also his uncle, his Param Guru. The name Prapanna Parijata was given to the work by the author himself. Parijata is a celestial wish-fulfilling tree capable of conferring all desired fruits on those who make wishes while in its shade. The work consists of 10 paritis, or chapters. After 5 verses, which constitute the invocatory portion, the following topics are dealt with in the 10 chapters that follow. 1. Pramana Padati, the authorities for property. 2. Swarupa Padati, on the nature of property. 3. Adhikara Padati, on the right of practice. 4. Guru Upasana Padati, on serving the Guru. 5. Bhagavat Paricharya Padati, on salvific activities of God. 6. Bhagavat Parijana Upasana Padati, on the worship of the attendants of God. 7. Bhagavat Upasana Padati, on serving the virtuous. 8. Vihita Vyavastana Padati, the determination of prescribed karma. 9. Varjaniya Padati, on the works that ought to be renounced. And 10. Halodara Padati, on the dawn of fruition. The words and sentences in square brackets are not actually in the text, but are supplied in order to make the paragraph more intelligible. The words in regular brackets indicate a meaning of a Sanskrit term. So we can translate Parijata as desire tree. It's a tree. It's supposed to be a sort of a tree that you sit underneath and you make a wish and your wish comes true. It refers also to the Puranic tree, which is seen today as supposedly night queen, type of flower. I believe it's night queen, a type of flower that has like a orange stem and a white leaves, or white petals, which has a very fragrant. It's said that it falls off the tree during Brahma Muhurta, which is the time every day, an hour and 36 minutes before sunrise, which is supposed to be good for spiritual endeavors. This Parijata tree was spoken about in the Puranas. Lord Krishna went to Vaikuntha, not to Vaikuntha, he went to Indraloka, I believe, to the heavenly planets to get this tree, because his wife Satyabhama wanted this fragrant flower. Anyway, so it's very, very nice flower used in the worship of God and the worship of deities. Okay, so this Parijata, or wish-fulfilling tree, the Prapanna Parijata would be, Prapanna, of course, has to do with property. Property means to surrender to God and to have God as your only refuge. And as understood in the Ramacharma Sloka and Krishna Charma Slokas of Ramayana and Mahabharata, which will be mentioned. And the Parijata is a desire tree for the seeker of refuge, the person who is the surrendered person. So it starts off with this Mangalacharanam, which is the praise of invocatory verses praising different acharyas and forms of the Lord. I salute the famous Varadarya, who is the ornament of the family of Vatsas, who by giving the nectar of the commentary on Sri Bhashya revives even me. I'm not exactly sure about this commentary on Sri Bhashya. The most famous commentary on Sri Bhashya, of course, is the Sri Bhashya, of course, is the commentary on Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras by Ramanuja. And for the Sri Sampradaya, the Sampradaya which is coming from Sri Devi or Mahalakshmi. The commentary on the Sri Bhashya, the most famous one is, of course, the Shuddha Prakashika by not coming to me right now. Shuddha Prakashika Bhatta is one name for him. Anyway, I'm not sure what commentary this refers to exactly. So anyway, I offer my innumerable salutations to the feet of teachers who are like so many sons, and by contact with whose feet, or pada, he's giving another meaning for the word pada here as rays of light. So what emanates from you, usually from the body, we have these limbs that emanate from us. So feet, pada feet, or rays of light. The minds of people blossom like lotuses. So it's an analogy here saying that the gurus, the teachers, are just like the feet of the gurus. They are just like rays of light coming from many suns. These gurus are, the analogy is the gurus are like suns, and that the sun is needed for flowers to bloom. So the minds of people are being brought to bloom by the light rays coming from the feet of these great teachers. When we say from the feet, we mean the instructions coming from these great teachers are causing people to expand their understanding of reality and understanding of the scriptures. So 3, salutation to the horse-headed god or horse-necked god, Hayagriva. Hayagriva means horse-necked. Who, by gifts of imperishable acts, has attained the quality of munificence, and who is of great effulgence. So this is a prayer to Hayagriva, Hayagriva being the god, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, who has to do with knowledge, and so the Vishnu form, just like the Devata Saraswati is sometimes praised, as giving knowledge. So the Lord who is prayed to for knowledge. Salutations to the Lord, to that God, who by constantly meditating on the eye of Lakshmi has, as it were, attained similitude with it, and has thus attained the shape of a fish, Meenavapu, and who freed the bestower of the Vedas, Brahma, from danger. Okay, this relates to the Puranic story where Lord Brahma, who is considered the first created being that was created by God, and who is considered to be the engineer of the universe in the Puranic stories, he was given the blueprint to the universe, which is considered the Vedas, the eternal Vedas by the Lord. But there were apparently 2 demons which represent doubt and ignorance, Madhu and Kaitaba, who stole away the knowledge of Brahma, stole away the Vedas from him. And the Lord then took an incarnation, and he gave back the Vedas to Brahma. So that's one story. Then, of course, there's another story where there was a great flood. So in many scriptures, there's a talk of a great flood, and there was a great flood, and the Lord came in the form of a fish. So here he's saying salutations to the God who is constantly meditating on the eye of Lakshmi, and the eye of Lakshmi, usually in Sanskrit poetics, the beautiful eyes, especially the eyes of beautiful ladies, right, are often compared to fish. They're fish-shaped eyes. This is considered to be very beautiful shape for the eyes, is they're fish-shaped. We can understand the fish, a very simple form of a fish is a sort of a flat oblong, round shape, but flattened out and curved eyes like a fish. So that's what it's meant by Mina Vapu, in the shape of a fish. So we similarly in Kanchipuram, we have this temple of goddess Devata Meenakshi. Meenakshi means one who has eyes. Aksha means eyes. Meena means fish. So eyes like a fish. So here he's talking about the Lord is meditating upon the eye of Lakshmi, right? And then by meditating on the eye of Lakshmi, the Lord himself took the form of a fish. The Lord himself came as what we call a Matsya avatar, one of the 10 avatars of Lord Vishnu, one of the 10 descents of Lord Vishnu, and who freed the bestower of the Vedas, Lord Brahma, from danger. So this is another Puranic story like that. So there's several Puranic stories which talk about Lord Brahma and the danger that the eternal knowledge of the Vedas was in when it is in his care, and how the Lord previously we talk about this Hayagriva. Lord Hayagriva is the one who killed these Madhu and Kaitaba demons. That's in the previous verse, and in this verse we have the story of the Matsya avatar. So we have these two forms of the Lord. The Lord had to come himself to protect the Vedas, the eternal knowledge of the scriptures, which had been given to Brahma. Okay, so moving on to verse 5. Taking shelter under the dust, Rajas means dust, of the feet of saints, which is potent enough to heal the affliction of passions, Rajas, right? We shall endeavor to compose the work known as Prapanna Parijata. So here again, the author has very nicely all of these. If we see the Sanskrit for these verses, we would see that the author is very careful in the way he's constructed these Sanskrit slokas. He's used here in the last sloka here, he's used the word rajas to mean two different things, because in Sanskrit we have all the different words in Sanskrit. Every word in Sanskrit has several meanings. So here the word rajas has been used in two different meanings. Rajas meaning dust, meaning the again, dust coming from the feet of the saints is equivalent to their instructions, their holy instructions, right? The teachers teach us their holy instructions. That's their benediction on us. The idea of dust on why instructions should be understood to be like the instructions of the teachers. The mercy of the teachers is to give us their instructions, to give us their thoughts, like that. In India, the custom is to surrender to the teacher by lying flat at the feet of the teacher, or touching the feet of the teacher, or taking the dust from the feet of the teacher. And this is itself a form of property or surrender, like that. And one of the types of ways that we can approach God is simply by surrendering to the teacher, like that. So when we surrender to the teacher, metaphorically and physically, lying flat and taking the dust of the teacher's feet, well, this is actually getting the mercy of the teacher is by taking the instructions of the teacher. So the dust, or rajas in this case, of the feet of the saints represents that mercy or the instructions of the teachers once again, which was spoken about in in verse 2. So all of these things are all linked together. And verse 5, he is equating that rajas is also considered to help us to get rid of the rajas that we have in the Vedic literature. It talks about three different modes in nature: sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are different what are called gunas or modes, and that means goodness, passion, and ignorance. So here rajas means passions. So the idea is that the author here prays that by taking the instructions in the form of dust from the feet of the saints, their instructions, that he will be able to apply those to his own life to overcome or heal the problems that he has, and the different problems that we have in this world are adhyatmic, adhibautic, adhidevic, having to do with other living beings, our own mind and body, and natural disturbances. And so we have all these different problems, but here he's specifically talking about the problems of the passions, which occur for, remember, these are adhyatmic problems with our own mind and senses. So when our mind contacts the objects of the senses, it inflames that, and these different passions occur. So he's saying very nicely that take the rajas, the dust from the feet of the saints, to overcome the rajas, same word, but different meaning, the passions that we find in our material life in this world. So we shall endeavor to compose a work called Prapanna Parijata. So he's saying that this work, he hopes, this is a benediction, Mangalacharanam, or these first things, these are wishes, prayers, but also benedictions on the persons who are going to read this book, that they should be able to take these instructions and to overcome the problems that they have from their own mind and body, of the passions of Rajaguna, which is the mode of passion. All right, so that's the Mangalacharanam, these five verses here. And just to look here at the footnote for Parijata, one of the five divine trees, the author derives it at the end of the book thus: Ashesha Pegshitam Yatra Parito Jayate Satam. That is to say that the essential requisites of a virtuous character have been collected here from various sources. I'm not quite sure why he put that in the footnote, but anyway, we'll see at the end of the book. So now, chapter 1. Chapter 1, the first chapter is the authorities for property. So, for example, we've all heard of Karma Yoga, we've all heard of Jnana Yoga, we've all heard of Bhakti Yoga. These are very commonly spoken of in the scriptures, especially in the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures. Property is a little bit, a lot of people have not heard of property, especially by the word property. There are other words which we're going to learn about for property. But what does property mean? Property basically means surrender. And it's also a method. It's also an upaya, or a method, or a means to attain the greatest good, which is, of course, liberation or moksha, freedom from this eternal cycle of birth and death. So what are the authorities for property? We have these other yogas: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and there are different authorities telling us, why to take to these different forms, these different means. But what is the authorities for property? So by epitomizing the teaching of the Vedanta, and down here, he gives a footnote about Vedanta. So let's just talk about what is Vedanta for a minute, right? Vedanta, the word Veda means knowledge, and anta means the end. So Vedanta means the end of the Veda, or the end of knowledge, the Upanishads. are the last part of the Veda, which deal with the philosophical parts of Vedic knowledge. So literally the end of the Veda, meaning an Upanishad, which comes at the end of the Veda. Hence, it's a term applied to the darshana. Darshana means to see. It's a way of seeing. It's a point of view, let's say, a philosophical viewpoint of the Upanishads. Vedanta as a system of philosophy is one of the 6 principal systems of Hindu philosophy. The others are Yoga, Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purva, Mimamsa, and Vedanta is the Uttara Mimamsa. It's otherwise known as Uttara Mimamsa. Mimamsa means a way of discussing things. Uttara means the ultimate or the second part, not to be mistaken with the first deliberation. Mimamsa means deliberation, which is Purva Mimamsa, which is Karmakanda. So if we can go into the meaning of all that jargon, but basically just take it that there are these 6 different philosophical viewpoints that accept the meaning of the Vedas, right? They all accept the Vedas, and they all have these 6 different understandings of the Vedas. So Vedanta as a system of philosophy is one of the 6 principal systems of Hindu philosophy based on the Upanishads, as teaching the ultimate aim and scope of the Veda. The system is also called Uttara being regarded as a sequel to Jaimini's Purva Mimamsa, right, otherwise known as Karmakanda, though practically quite a distinct system. It represents the evolution of the Hindu philosophy, and as such, it now actually covers the whole of Orthodox India and forms the basis of its several religious sects, so Hindu sects. In regards to the whole world, as it regards the whole world as synthetically derived from one eternal principle. One eternal principle was the origin of everything, and that is the Brahman, or the Supreme Being, which is both the efficient and material cause of the phenomenal universe. Efficient and material cause. So the universe is made from Brahman by Brahman. Just as a potter, so in terms of the analogy of the potter making a pot, the Brahman is both the clay and the potter. Okay, so in regards to the whole world as synthetically derived from one eternal principle, Brahman, the Supreme Being, which is both efficient and material cause of the phenomenal universe, the all-pervading essence and spirit, or the universe, and everything as ultimately being absorbed into Brahman, the one absolute esse, being. We can say that thing that esse here means thing that exists, like that. And that comes from Taittiriya Upanishad. There's a definition of what is Brahman. Yatova imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti abhisham vishanti. Right, that is given in Taittiriya Upanishad. It means Brahman is that from which everything emanates, by which everything is maintained, and into which everything enters. So, ultimately. So that's a little bit about Vedanta here. Now, in terms of Vishishtadvaita, which is a form of Vedanta, there are different forms of Vedanta. This is of the philosophical viewpoint of the Upanishads. And this Vishishtadvaita Vedanta is followed by the author of this book, Vatsavartacharya Narada. He is a Sri Vaishnava, and Sri Vaishnavas follow this Vishishtadvaita Vedanta of Ramanuja, and it's a form of this Vedanta Darshana, like that, of this form of Uttara Mimamsa. Now, Sri Vaishnavas also consider there's another form of Vedanta. They have also the combined 4,000 Nalayira Divya Prabandhas of the Alwars, which is also considered a Tamil, and those poems are in Tamil, and they consider that to be equal to the Vedas, equal to the Sanskrit Vedas. So here Vedanta, when he uses the word Vedanta, because he's a Sri Vaishnava, we should not. The Sri Vaishnavas are often called Ubhaya Vedantins. That Ubhaya in Sanskrit means both. They are Vedantins who follow Vedanta, the Vedanta philosophy of both the Sanskrit Veda and the Tamil Veda. So he hasn't mentioned it here, but it's quite possible and quite understandable to say that a Sri Vaishnava author, when he uses the word Vedanta, refers not only to the Sanskrit Vedanta but also to the Tamil Vedanta, the 4,000 words of the Alwars or poems of the Alwars, which also give the same meaning, according to the Sri Vaishnava philosophy, gives the same meaning as the Sanskrit Vedanta. So, by epitomizing the teaching of the Vedanta, or for Sri Vaishnavas, we can say the two Vedantas, and other works, we shall here be dealing with 10 topics. So he's going to enumerate some topics here. So this is before starting exactly on the giving the authority for property. He's going to lay out, this is basically a table of contents coming right after the Mangalacharanam. 1, the great authorities for property, taking refuge in God. So this is the first topic, but we're going to go through the other topics, just like we had that in the introduction up there by Rama Ramanujacharya. Table of contents. So number 2, it's nature. So first of all, what are the authorities? Authorities for people who are following Vedanta should be authorities coming from the Vedic literature, either directly from the Vedas and Upanishads or from the ancillary books like Smriti, Puranas, etc. And also, we can say for Sri Vaishnavas coming from the Tamil Vedanta, from the Nalaya Divya Prabandha. So we'll see what the authorities are. Number 2, the nature of property, the nature of this idea of surrender, right? This formula of surrender. What is its nature? So defining property, basically. 3, the third thing, the person's entitled to practice it. So really 3 comes also under 2, because if we understand its nature, then we'll understand who is qualified to perform it like that, who's qualified to do property, right? 4, or surrender, the duties of a Prapanna, or a person who takes refuge towards the guru or spiritual preceptor. So in the process of property, one normally approaches a spiritual preceptor and does property through the agency of the spiritual preceptor. So what are the duties of that person who is a Prapanna towards his guru or his teacher? Towards and then separately, what is the duties of the Prapanna towards God, right? And then continuing on from that, what is duties towards the eternals? The eternals here, probably the word in Sanskrit is nityas. There are other beings, there are other conscious beings in this world, in this universe, apart from God and the individual. And they are there are 3 types of these jivatmans or other beings. And they are baddhas, muktas, and nityas. So muktas and nityas are eternally they're liberated. Nityas are eternally liberated. Muktas have become liberated by some process, right? And then we have baddhas who are still engrossed in material nature, in material life. So here he's talking about eternals. Usually the word nitya would be used in Sanskrit. Nitya would mean what is the Prapanna's, what are the Prapanna's duties towards eternals, towards the nityas, eternals, other living beings that are also eternal servants of God. So, and 7, towards other devotees. So these would be those who are mumukshus, who want liberation. Maybe they're still considered to be baddhas right now. After they leave this material world and this material body, they can rise to the level of being liberated as muktas. So towards other devotees, and a termination of duties Here down here, he's got, before we leave this page, we just look at footnote number 3. According to Vishishtadvaita theology, the jiva is of 3 kinds: Nitya, the eternal, Bada, the bound, and Mukta, the liberated. Of these, the eternals always attend on God, ministering unto him, and have no births except when they voluntarily incarnate with an avatar for the purpose of serving him, when he also appears as an avatar. Or when he doesn't appear as an avatar, they can come on his order. So number 8, the 8th topic, the determination of duties from among those prescribed in the Shastras. So there are many, many duties prescribed in the Vedic Shastras, or the Shastras that are ancillary to the Vedas. And so amongst them, which ones are to be followed by the Prapannas, the persons who are surrendered, and maybe which ones are not so important for the Prapannas. So 9, the 9th section here would be those practices that are to be avoided. So practices that are to be avoided. Generally, we're going to see that practices which are conducive to the individuals, to the individuals following the idea that that he wants to serve God, right, are positively, and those which should be avoided are which are negative towards serving of God. So these are called yamas and niyamas. So things to be done and things not to be done by the Prapanna. And finally, the result. What is the result of all this process, this whole process? All right, so that's the table of contents basically. So continuing on, for my sole endeavor is to fix in the mind by constant contemplation the teaching received and nothing else, as faults found herein should be excused by good people because of the complexity of the subject. Okay, so here the author is just saying, he's saying, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that I want to fix in my own mind all of these ideas by constant contemplation on that, of the teaching that I received from my teachers, and nothing else really. So I'm not preaching to anybody else necessarily. I'm more or less doing this as an example of preaching to myself and trying to fix these things in my mind. And any faults in my presentation here should be forgiven by people who understand that this is a complex subject. Yeah, so that's a very nice. So a lot of authors will make such humble authors will make such a declaration either at the beginning or the end of their composition. Nice. So this is all preparatory. Now we're going to start with finding what are the authorities for property. So first thing, property in this verse 4 here. Property, seeking refuge in God or surrendering to God, is first prescribed in the Veda of the Taitiriyas. So the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda, right? There are 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvan. And the Krishna Yajurveda, there's a Krishna Yajurveda and a Shukla Yajurveda, so there's a black and white Yajurveda. In the black Yajurveda, right, which is specifically the one which is known as Taittiriya. Taittiriya is a branch of the Veda. It's prescribed in that section of the Veda, and there in the hymn or mantra means a hymn, right? Commencing with Vasuranya, it is mentioned by the name Nyasa, right? Or delivering oneself up to God, together with its MO or modus operandi, right? So let's have a look at the footnotes for this, 4, 5, and 6. So to explain a little bit more about the Taittiriya branch or Shaka of the Yajurveda, the followers of the Taittiriya branch of the Yajurveda, known as the Black Yajurveda, which takes its name from the sage Titiri, its first teacher. So there was a teacher of this form of the Veda called Titiri. or also from the Puranic story of the Franklin partridge. Here in Hawaii on Maui, we have these Franklin partridges. They're also there in India. The bird connected with the popular Puranic story. There was a story that Jaimini, I believe, Vedavyasa taught the Yajurveda to one of his disciples, and that disciple, there was some falling out between master and disciple, and the master asked to get the knowledge all back. So metaphorically, the disciple vomited the knowledge. He gave back all the knowledge. So that metaphorical vomit was eaten by these metaphorical Franklin partridges, right? They ate that vomit, and that's why that particular form of the Veda is called the Krishna Yajurveda. Now, these are all Puranic stories meant to explain the reason why in the Krishna Yajurveda there's a separation between there's a separation between mantras and between the Brahmana and the Aranyaka parts. There are several different parts of the Veda, and they are mixed. They're mixed. Whereas in the Shukla Yajurveda, they're completely separated. So what was separated before became mixed. So Shukla Yajurveda, there's all very nice, neatly separated divisions. In the Krishna Yajurveda, things tend to be a little bit mixed like that in the work. So because what was separated in one Veda became mixed in another Veda, the story came up to explain about that in simple terms, that somebody vomited that Veda. Because we know that when we eat separate things. It all mixes together in our stomach. If we become sick and we vomit it, it all is mixed together. So this is the idea behind this Puranic story of the Titiri and the Krishna Yajurveda, the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda. But again, there's also the understanding that there was a teacher of the Krishna Yajurveda called Titiri, like that. So whatever story you want to tell about it, it explains how that portion of the Veda is slightly mixed in its form. All right, so 5, mantra. Now, mantra, originally the Samhita portion of the Veda is distinguished from the Brahmanas. Okay, so in the Vedas, going back to understanding about the Vedas, if you don't know about the Vedas, Veda means knowledge. The Vedas are divided. You'll hear about 3 Vedas or 4 Vedas or sometimes 2 Vedas. So the oldest Veda is the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is in poetry. It's in sloka forms. It's in different forms of different meters. The Yajurveda is supposed to be more prose in form. Then we have the Samaveda, which is basically the hymns of the Rig Veda, which are put to different tones. There are seven tones. In the other Vedas, there are only 3 tones, low, middle, and high. But in the Samaveda, there are 7 tones, Sarigama Pada Ni. These are equivalent to in the Western music, we say do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. These are different notes. So the Samaveda is sung, which is why we have this word Samagana. Gana means to sing. And so these are 3 Vedas. And then we have also the Atharva Veda, which some people call the cursing Veda or whatever. It has some other things in it. And so we have this division of the Vedas. So in this division of the Vedas, there's also, for each one of those Vedas, there are also divisions. So each of those Vedas has Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. So each one of those Vedas has a Samhita section. The Samhita section is the hymn portion. The Brahmana section is the portion which tells the Brahmana priests, how to use the hymns in the sacrifice, the yaga or yagya. And the Aranyaka section is more for the retired or renounced personalities that live in the forest, right? And the Upanishad gives the esoteric meaning or the philosophical meaning behind the sacrifice. like that. So these are the four sections like that. When we look in a Upanishad like Muktika Upanishad, it lists all these 108 Upanishads and lists the different ones that are attached to each Veda. So, for example, Isa Upanishad is very important because it actually comes in the Samhita section of the Yajurveda, where all the other Upanishads are slightly separate, but they are attached to a particular Veda. So we have those four sections in each Veda. So in the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, we have those four sections, and we have each one of them has a Samhita, the hymns, a Brahmana, the Brahmana, Aranyaka, and the Upanishads for each Veda. So originally, the Samhita portion of the Veda was as distinguished from the Brahmana portion, right? Hence, a Vedic hymn or prayer addressed to any deity. It is of three kinds. Rik, okay, so in the Rig Veda, we have these riks. The reason why we say Rig Veda and not Rik Veda is because of Sandhi, which are Sanskrit rules that the K gets softened into a G before the V. So Rik, the riks are usually the verses of the Rig Veda. So Rik metrically and intoned loudly. Two, the Yajus, prose, which are intoned in a low tone. And Saman, metrically and sung. Later, it came to be applied to any formula of prayer to a deity, and finally to an incarnation or a charm. Okay, so the word mantra has gone through an evolution of meanings, and again, because it's a Sanskrit word, has several meanings. So sometimes when generally when people talk about a mantra, they talk about manaha trayate iti mantraha. Something which helps us to focus the mind is a mantra, like that. So some prayer or some small aphorism is considered a mantra, but technically the original meaning of the word mantra is either a rik, a yajus, or a saman of these three Vedas. A section coming from these samhitas, so coming from those samhitas, right? So once again, in the text here, it's saying that this mantra beginning Vasuranya in the Taittiya Krishna Yajurveda is in that mantra we find the word nyasa, which is equivalent to property. So that's the origin of property, the Vedic origin of property. So somebody might say, okay, you're talking about property, but isn't property something that came later? So Sri Vaishnavas thought up this idea of property. It was never really there in the Vedas. No, it was there. It was there in Krishna Yajurveda, in the form of the word nyasa. And if we look in the Upanishads, the Upanishads map out 32 or I think Shankara says 33 different what are called vidyas, which are vidya actually means knowledge, but it means methods. Vidyas means Upanishadic or Vedic methods. What are the Vedic methods for attaining liberation? The Vedic methods for self-realization, God realization. These are called vidyas. So there are 32 or 33 of them, depending how they're classified. And one of them is called Nyasa Vidya. So this Nyasa Vidya is what is being talked about here. And the author is saying that is equivalent to property. So when we say property, we are actually talking about Nyasa Vidya. The first mention of property is as in the form nyasa. So we can either say property or we can say nyasa. Another word is sharanagati. There are different words. They all mean the same thing, is what the author is pointing out here. And originally, this is the Vedic origin of them. So this part of the Krishna Yajurveda. So nyasa here, moving on to footnote 6, nyasa means literally pledge. We can say nyasa means to touch, or it means to place, So when we, just as we talked about falling at the feet of the teacher, surrender, pledging, allegiance, or pledging ourselves to the teacher or to God, right? That he's saying here literally means pledge. So here it's synonymous with prapatti, meaning pledging oneself to God. It is recognized by the Upanishads as one of the 32 Brahma Vidyas, sciences teaching the knowledge of Brahman. Okay, good. So he explained it here. Moving on to now. Let's continue on here. So we were here at verse 6. There's also there it is said, where in the Veda, in this mantra or hymn, beginning with Vasuranya, it is said that the Supreme Brahman, remember we spoke about the Supreme Brahman, the origin of all, right? Or we could say God, who is the object of the meditation, who is the cause of all, who is all pervading. He's all pervading. He's throughout everything. Why? We've discussed that before, that he is the efficient, but he's also the material cause of the universe. If he's the material cause of the universe, then he's spread everywhere. He's spread everywhere. Yeah. So, who is all pervading and is the generator of all, is himself worthy of being sought after. He's worthy of being sought after. We want to know ourselves, but we also want to know everything else. We want to know God. So the Brahman, whose glory is sung thus, quote, "You are now the giver of light to the sun, etc. As in the previous cycle, you are brilliant and beautiful like precious gems." Okay. So he's quoted this verse here. I'm not exactly sure. We don't see the Sanskrit, so we could maybe say some more about it if we saw the Sanskrit or knew the quotation where it actually came from, but there's no footnote, so we'd have to look that up. So verse 7, making the Jivatman, the self, the living being, right? The oblation, one shall sacrifice it in the glorious fire of Brahman, whose body one is, repeating the mantra Om, which is the essence of the Vedas. Okay, so there's a lot here. The mantra Om is the essence of the Vedas. So Om is Akara, Ukara, Makara. It is made of 3 letters. This sound Om, the syllable Om, and it's considered to be transcendental because it gives the essence of the Vedas. And of course, we can go on and on about speaking about why Om is the essence of the Vedas, but we can let's just take it here that it is considered to be the essence of the Vedas for some reason, right? Making the Jivatman the oblation. So here the analogy is given of a sacrifice. In the Vedic system, usually the sacrifice is done in fire. So there's a fire and different oblations, different things are offered into the fire, usually ghee and grains. And so here he's saying that if we take the soul or the individual Atman, the individual self, and offer it as an oblation into the fire is considered to be Brahman, whereas the fire is the fire. Brahman is the source. So offering the self, which is the part, into the whole, into the what is caused, the Jivatman, into the cause, back into its cause, right? Whose body one is. So again, this is the analogy of Shariri Bhava, which Ramanuja has explained from another part of the Veda Antayami Brahmana. It's understood that to conceive of how the living being and what is the relationship between the living being and the universe and God. So Ramanuja gives this analogy of the soul and the body, that the soul and the body appear to be one thing, but in fact they're 2 things, but they're intertwined in such a way the body is supported and controlled by the soul. So similarly, the universe and the living beings are controlled and supported by God in the same way. So this is the understanding of sharira shariri. Sharira means that which is supported, that which is controlled, right? It also means the body. And shariri is the soul, which is supporting the body, like that. So sharira shariri bhava, this idea, this analogy of the soul and the body has to do with the relationship between the universe and the living being with God, the created with the creator. Okay, so continuing on. So he's saying that repeating the mantra Om, like here the mantra is used, the word mantra is used in a different, in a slightly, in the more usual way, the more common way nowadays, as being just a prayer, short prayer. So the very shortest prayer is this Om. Om is the essence of the Vedas, like that. So in fact, if we go into the meaning of Om, anybody wants to look at other books on property like Mamukshapadi by Pila Lokacharya, they'll see that that A represents Vishnu, Ma represents the living being, U represents Lakshmi, but also can also represent um, uh, can represent anyway. The point is that AUM is understood to mean that the living being is surrendered to God, should surrender to God through the agency of Lakshmi, but whatever. So Om has everything in it to explain this analogy of offering the self to God, offering the self to God. And the whole picture of the analogy given here is that the self is like the oblation which is being offered into the fire, which is the Lord, which is Brahman. So thus the application of property is declared in the sacred text to assume the form of pranava, or the sacred syllable Om. So property here is declared in the sacred text, in the Vedas, to be equal to the syllable Om, where it is represented as a sacrifice in the body of those that know it accordingly. Okay. Of the various penances mentioned herein, property, otherwise known as nyasa, is stated as the highest. The dvaya is considered in Katavali to be the primary mantra of property. So we have a footnote here. So we'll go to footnote 7. The dvaya is, what is it saying? Considered to be the primary mantra. So it is said that the Dvaya mantra comes in a, some people say Dvaya Upanishad, but some people say it's a Kila section of the Veda. Now, what's a Kila section? Kila means an appendix. So there are, as we said, there are the Vedas, and they have different sections, the Samhitas, Aranyakas, Brahmanas, and Upanishads. And then there are also, sometimes to the Samhita section, there are what are called Kilas, which are appendix sections. So the appendix also has to be included in the text of the Samhita. So this Katavali is considered like an appendix to the Veda in which the Dvaya mantra comes, the Dvaya mantra. So what is the Dvaya mantra? Though anybody who has at all studied a little bit about property, this Dvaya mantra is essentially an expansion of the Omkara, an expansion of the Pranava, expansion of the Astakshara mantra, the Om Namo Narayana, the 8-syllable mantra, and it expands to give more explanation of exactly what property is. So the Dvaya, the sacred mantra of property, of surrender, the word signifies twofold because this Dvaya mantra has two sections to it, two sentences. The first sentence is the combination of two mantras, the Mula mantra and the other. The Mula mantra and the other. So he calls the first one the Mula mantra, I guess, or the second one the Mula mantra. Not sure. But anyway, usually the word Mula mantra refers to the Astakshara mantra and not to the Dvaya mantra. But here, he's listed the Dvaya mantra here in Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Papadye, which means I surrender unto the 2 feet of Sriman of Narayana, who is associated with Sri, right? And Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, I offer my obeisances, I offer my respects to Narayana, who is also associated with Sri or Lakshmi. I take refuge in the feet of Narayana, along with Lakshmi Devi. I salute the divine couple. He has paraphrased the Dwaya mantra here as that. All right, so carrying on. So he's introduced, first of all, he said that their property, let's summarize a little bit. He said that property is coming from the Vedas. He's given the word nyasa as an equivalent. He said that it comes from a mantra in the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda, beginning with Vasuranya, and which mentions nyasa. So that as a pramana from the Veda itself. Then he said that the essence of it is Omkara, the pranava, and it's also known by its expansion of Omkara in the Kila section of the Veda called the Dwaya mantra, which is Sriman Narayana Charanosham Papadye Shrimate Narayana Namaha. So next he's going to continue on. So he's saying the Svetashvatara Upanishad is cited as a highly favorable authority on this subject of property. This Upanishad, in speaking about the course of practice, also states as follows. So here's a quote from Svetashvatara Upanishad. So first of all, we've got from the Veda itself, the Krishna Yajurveda, and now from an Upanishad, from the Samhita section, and now from the Upanishad section. In order to obtain the knowledge of the self, one who is desirous of liberation should take refuge with him who in the beginning created Brahma and taught him the Vedas. Okay, so this is a proposal from Svetashvatara Upanishad. One should take refuge with him. A Prapanna, one who seeks refuge, is never forsaken even though he deserves to be killed. Okay, so not sure where that's coming from. Many scriptural passages like this are also authorities on the subject. Not sure exactly where. And in the Sri Shastra is the Pancharatra Agama. Okay, we've got a footnote about that. The Bhagavan Vishnu, or the Supreme Lord Vishnu, taught Brahma the mantra called Dwaya, beginning with the words Sriman Narayana. In the same way, it was explained by Lakshmi to Indra in the Lakshmi Tantra, which is also part of the Pancharatra Agama. So let's just have a look at footnote 8, which explains what the Pancharatra Agama is. Sri Shastra, when we talk about Sri Shastra, we're talking about the body of tantric teaching. So there are two different branches of knowledge. There's the Veda, which is called Nigama, and then there's the other Shastras are called Agama, like that. Part of the Agama, there are different Agamas, which teach us how to worship God. And for Vaishnavas, there are two Agamas, Pancharatra and Vaikhanasa Agamas. So in the Pancharatra Agamas, the body of tantric teaching known as Pancharatra Agamas, sacred to the Vaishnavas, the main portion of Sri Ramanuja's philosophy is based on this. In this work, the word Shastra alone is used to indicate it. Bhagavat Shastra is another name for it. So whenever you see Shastra in this work, it means Pancharatra. Whenever you see Sri Shastra, it means Pancharatra. When you see Bhagavat Shastra, it means Pancharatra. That's what it means. So the word Shastra itself, of course, just means authority or a scriptural authority. So, but the specific scriptural authority we're talking about here is the Pancharatra. Now, Yamunacharya, the Param Guru of Ramanujacharya, and Vedanta Deshika have written two books giving the authority of the Pancharatra. So here, Nadadur Amal, or Vatsabharadacharya, he's quoting from the Pancharatra Agama. He's quoting the Pancharatra Agama, but he's mentioning it. But it should be understood that we first of all have to authenticate the Pancharatra Agama. So there are authorities like Shankaracharya and others who have decried the Pancharatra Agama as not being acceptable as an authority. So we looked at Agama Pramanya by Yamunacharya or Pancharatra Raksha by Vedanta Deshika to authenticate the Pancharatra Agama, and then we can come back to this section like that. Of course, we'll take it because he's a Sri Vaishnava following in the footsteps of Ramanujacharya. And Yamunacharya and Vedanta Deshika is going to write Pancharatra Raksha after this is written, of course, because this is Vatsavaracharya, who was his uncle. We can say that he already accepted that Pancharatra Agama was acceptable authority, so there's no need for that to be discussed here. So if we go back, yes, so it describes this Lakshmi Tantra as part of Pancharatra Agama, and anyway, this is called Sri Shastra here. The Sanat Kumara Samhita, another Samhita from the Pancharatra Agama, also mentions with respect that property yields the fruits of all desires and is independent of all other means to achieve one's goals. It's independent. It's an independent thing. So sometimes property or surrender to God is lumped together with bhakti, lumped together with bhakti yoga or devotional service to God. There's different types of bhakti, of course, but this bhakti yoga is sadhana bhakti. It's the bhakti which is used. Sadhana means a process to achieve a goal. So karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, these are the process of works, the process of knowledge, the process of devotion. These three processes spoken of in Bhagavad Gita are all processes to obtain a goal. However, there's another form of bhakti. There's not only sadhana bhakti, but there also is sadhya bhakti. Sadhya bhakti means that bhakti which is the goal and not the means. So it's devotion to God as a goal and not as a means, like that. So property falls under that type of bhakti. So sometimes people get mixed up. What is bhakti? What is property? But here, very clearly, the author wants to say that in the Sanat Kumara Samhita, we shouldn't be confused that bhakti and property are exactly the same thing. They're not the same thing. Of course, we can read in the Bhagavatam, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Parasevanam, Arshanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedanam. So Atmanivedanam is equal to property in a sense. Property means surrender. Atmanivedanam means surrender. Atma, Nivedana, to surrender the soul, like that. So this can be a part of bhakti. So it can also be a part of sadhana bhakti. So sadhana bhakti, that process where the living being is trying to attain by himself, by his own efforts, he's trying to attain a goal through devotion or through works or through knowledge, as karma yoga and jnana yoga are. But through devotion, particularly, there are these 9 forms. In the Bhagavatam, there's a very simple statement that I gave, and then in the Lord Rama, I believe in Ramayana, there's also a 9-fold division of bhakti. So when we look there, we see, oh, there's this surrender to God is there as part of bhakti, part of sadhana bhakti. So some people say, well, that, this property is not separate. It's part of bhakti yoga. But here, on the authority of the Sanat Kumara Samhita, the author is saying that not only property will give you all your desires, right? Fulfill your desires, both material and spiritual being more important, right? But it is also independent of all other means. It's also independent of all other means. Independent of all other means means it's independent of bhakti. So this is a little bit different understanding amongst those who are followers of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, Ramanuja Sampradaya, than other Sampradayas. In other Vaishnava Sampradayas, they tend to perform sadhana bhakti, and they consider surrender to be part of sadhana bhakti, and it's a part of the different of that form of bhakti yoga. Whereas in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, on this authority of the Pancharatra Agama, Sanat Kumara Samhita specifically, but probably also Lakshmi Tantra, it's understood that property is considered independent also. So there's a type of surrender in sadhana bhakti, in bhakti yoga, and there's a type of surrender which is separate from that, which is totally separate from that, which can also go together with sadhya bhakti, bhakti for its own sake, devotion to God for its own sake and not for any goal or any means, right? Okay, so we have this quotation here. It'd be interesting to look at the original text of the Sanskrit after going through the book, to go back and look at the different original texts of the Sanskrit and map them out from the. It'd be nice if they were in footnotes, the original texts from the different Samhitas. But anyway, here he's mentioning Sanat Kumar Samhita mentions that, so that's a very important aspect here. So not only do we know the origins and the authority of property, but we understand that property, we don't confuse what property is. This part should probably be in the other part, which explains about property and what is the meaning of property. But we should understand the property. One of the ideas about property, or the understandings of property, is that it is separate. It is a separate and independent means. That's very important. So continuing on, thus property is completely independent of any other means. And there's a footnote there. It yields of itself the fruits of all desires to all persons in all places and at all times. That's very interesting. So not only property is independent, but it yields the fruits of all desires, as we said, spiritual and material, right? For all persons. So we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here by saying it's for all persons, therefore there are no qualifications for it. In all places, again, so therefore there's no limitations on where it can be done. And at all times, there's no limitations as to when it can be done. So no limitations to the person who can do it, or the place it can be done, or the time that it can be done. Very nice. So this footnote says, means, in Sanskrit upaya, are those religious projects by which we engage in to bring about our own liberation and acquire spiritual merit, such as study, fasting, pilgrimages, purification, austerity, pujas, yagyas, sacrifices, etc. Okay. So continuing on, that's what it means by other means. Other means is what Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarva Dharman, or Sarva Dharma means other means. These other means of self-effort, right? Because property can separate to that and does not involve the self, any effort from the self. So continuing on, it severs one's bondage from samsara. Samsara, again, the eternal wheel of reincarnation, of birth and death, old age and disease that we hear in this material world. So it severs one's bondage to samsara when it is uttered even once. When it is uttered even once, I think this is relating back to Omkara and relating back to Dwaya, especially Dwaya mantra. Dwaya mantra is the essence of property. So as the restraining capacity of the missile of Brahma, the missile of Brahma being called in Sanskrit a Brahmastra, right? Even though it was irresistible, was nullified at once owing to the distrust of the Rakshasas in its power to bind Hanuman. So property becomes ineffectual from faithlessness. Okay, so here what he's saying is he's giving the analogy of this story in the Ramayana, and the story will be down here in the footnote. Hanuman was immobilized. Hanuman was, of course, the monkey or Vanara, not human, subhuman follower of Lord Rama, who went to Sri Lanka, to Ceylon, to take a message from Rama in the form of his ring to Sita, who had been kidnapped by the Rakshasa, or the demon Ravana. So she was kidnapped and she was kept imprisoned in the Ashok forest, and Hanuman went there. So when he went there, he also did some mischief by burning the place down, and he was captured. He was captured by the followers of Ravana, and they employed a mantra called a brahmastra, which is a prayer that it was a prayer that immobilized him. So he was immobilized by this particular mantra. Now, the thing about this brahmastra is it only works. It only works if you have faith that it works. If you lose faith that it works, right, in some way, then it doesn't work. It depends upon your faith, like that. So the Rakshasas, the followers of Ravana, they used brahmastra to immobilize Hanuman. And but then they thought, well, maybe he's such a great foe, we should also tie him with a rope. So they took a rope of jute and they tied him up as well. So because they tied him up with a rope, it means that they lacked complete faith in the Brahmastra mantra, the immobilization mantra prayer. And therefore, because they lacked complete faith in that, it didn't work. So what he's saying here, what Bhattacharya is saying here, is that property, the analogy given here is he's saying that property works, but you have to have complete faith in it. So we'll see later on. There's when we talk about the definition of property, there should be mahavishwas. There should be complete faith. There should be complete faith in the process of property in the Supreme Lord, that He will save us, like that. If there's complete faith, then He will save us. If there's not complete faith, what the teacher is saying here, the author is saying here, is that it may not work, like that. That's a very interesting point. I'm not sure whether that's an acceptable point from the point of view of the southern acharyas, the Tengalaya acharyas, but certainly Vatsavartacharya is we would say a proto-northern acharya of the Vadagalai camp. So he may have some ideas like this. So we're not sure that we totally accept this idea, but anyhow, that's the story. And he's mentioned it here. So where are we? Probably completely any means, right? Yeah, ineffectual from the faithlessness. Okay, so then, therefore, it will give freedom or mukti or liberation to those that place their trust in it, either in association with other means, in association with other means, or by itself. Property accomplishes the freedom of those that are desirous of salvation in the same way as pranava, as a pranava. Okay, so that's a very interesting statement here. So property here, he's talking about surrender to the Lord, but he's also talking about the Dvaya mantra, and he's saying it's in the same way as the pranava. It will accomplish your salvation. The pranava, meditation on the pranava in the Vedas, in the different vidyas in the Vedas is also recommended. Therefore, it will give freedom or liberation to those who trust it. That's referring to the previous verse and the story about Hanuman, either in association with other means or by itself. Okay, so here also we get a slight difference between the northern and southern acharyas of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So whereas the Tengalaya acharyas would say, no, only by property. Property is the only way. The Lord is the only way. Whereas the Vadagalaya acharyas would say, no, Bhakti Yoga is also a way, is also a method. We can also note that even amongst the Tengalayas, Pilalokacharya has mentioned that there's, in his Arka Panchakam, he's mentioned that there are 5 ways, right? So there's Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, but there's also 2 types of property. There's the Acharya property, and there's the Lord's property. So surrender to the Lord and surrender to the Acharya. Usually surrender to the Lord and surrender to the Acharya are both accepted by the Prapanna, by the person who is a mumukshu, who wants liberation. through the system of property. So it may be that we can accept this statement here that the other forms, another form means is surrender to the Acharya, or by itself just surrender to God. At the same time, what I think here is being meant by this author is that he's speaking about the other means, which is bhakti yoga, like that. So bhakti yoga should not be given up. But we can see that the argument of the Southern Acharyas is that, well, either you accept bhakti as a sadhana, right? Right, or you accept property as as the means, property, which means accepting the Lord as the means. So either one is they're incompatible according to the Southern Acharyas, because one is a method of self-effort and one says to give up the method of self-effort. So they're incompatible according to the Southern Acharyas. According to the Northern Acharyas, they may be compatible, and that's why he says that here. So the Bhagavan Vishnu has clearly said to the attentive Vishvaksena is his commander-in-chief, his secretary, as follows. And we don't know exactly where this quote is coming from because I don't see a footnote. But anyway, apparently, it may be from the Parijata. We have to find out where this quotation is coming from. But Lord Vishnu says to Vishvaksena, it is difficult to follow other means of self-liberation, because there's always a danger of losing the qualifications which are required to practice those means, right? Either by not being qualified in the first place, or by losing the qualification by either not doing what needs to be done or doing what should not be done, right? Krityakarna or akrityakarna, like that. So consequently, I shall now mention in this connection the one method of liberation which is common to everyone. So if we have, as stated before, if it's common to everyone at all places at all times, then it must mean that there is no qualification in terms of required practice. So there is no yama and niyama. There's ultimately no yamas and niyamas. No rules of commission or omission that have to be followed. So on account of the negative influence, so it'd be interesting to find out where this statement is coming from. Probably either from Sanat Kumar Samhita or Lakshmi Tantra, as he said. We go through Lakshmi Tantra, we probably find something like this. So on account of the negative influence of time, because of the unsteady nature of the mind, on account of the attachment to the senses to their objects, on account of indulgence in forbidden acts, and on account of not doing what is ordained to be done, and due to the adverse nature of the times during which we live, the leader of hosts, leader of hosts, he's talking to Vishvaksena, it's impossible to conquer the drive for sensual pleasures. So there you have it. The Lord himself says to Vishvaksena, who is an eternal associate of his, right, that this is why property is most important, because it's the only surefire means of attaining the goal. 23. Therefore, O great sage. Now, is this is a quotation from somewhere else? This may be a quotation from somewhere else, because I doubt that Lord Vishnu is addressing Vishvaksena as O great sage. It'd be interesting to see where it's coming from. So therefore, O great sage, not everyone is qualified for karma yoga. Okay, this may be from Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, but because there are so many prescribed duties in the scriptures and not everyone is qualified to perform them. Very few people even have an interest to follow the path of jnana yoga. We had karma yoga. We had something here, a footnote. Karma yoga, the performance of secular activities and religious rites with the practice of non-attachment and with the goal of eventually liberating oneself from samsara. Some sects, like the Vaikhanasas, so the people who follow Vaikhanasa Agama, adopt it as a sole means and consider it to be perfect in itself. So Vaikhanasa Agama, people who follow Vaikhanasa Agama, even though they may appear to be Sri Vaishnavas, their philosophy is a little bit different. They term their philosophy as Lakshmi Vishishtadvaita. And here, what he's saying is that in the Vaikhanasa Agama, people are saying that actually by karma yoga, whatever they define karma yoga to be, they can make that an upaya. That's a means to liberation. So, and then later on in text 24, we hear about the deficiencies of karma yoga in 23. In 24, we get the deficiencies of jnana yoga, that very few people are very interested in the path of jnana yoga because it requires a lot of study and a lot of time. In the absence of such an interest, neither affection nor higher love, priti and bhakti, right, for me arises. So if we don't have intense interest in jnana yoga, it's not going to work, because priti and bhakti, this affection and love for the Lord, is not going to arise. So 12 and 13. So we have, let's see if we have where's the footnotes for 12 and 13? Here we are. So jnana yoga, contemplation and meditation as a means of acquiring spiritual insight into the true nature of one's own Atman or soul, and thus affecting liberation. And 13, love towards equals is priti, and love towards superiors is bhakti. Bhakti for God is transcendental love. Okay, so it's just giving an explanation of those words. So if we continue on here, 25, therefore, as there is no qualification to practice karma yoga or any other yoga, and as there is no other course of action for one to follow, one should take refuge in my feet as the only way. So it may be that this whole section is the Lord speaking to Vishvaksena. Not quite sure. We'd have to check it out. But is a very good argument to explain why only property is the only way. So once again, considering well the pitiful state that has befallen one, and considering also my attractive qualities, this is Lord Vishnu speaking, one who resorts to me with full awareness that I am the only means is liberated forever. Very, very good statement here. So it seems that this is an ongoing discussion or explanation of property by the Lord to Vishvaksena. Resolution. Now he's going to give a definition of property. This is a very famous resolution which is found in Lakshmi Tantra, also in Aribudnya Samhita in a slightly different form. So resolution to act in conformity to his will, absence of opposition to it, conviction that he will protect and solicitation for his protection, resignation of oneself, Atmaniksheba, to him, and the feeling of helplessness, Karpanya. These are the 6 aspects of Sharanagati, taking refuge. Actually, there are 5 aspects, and Sharanagati is this. Yeah, it says Saranga Sharanagati is the end of the sloka like that. So we know where that comes from. That comes from Lakshmi Tantra. So that's the definition of property. So he's given some authorities for property, and then he's giving a definition here. By means of this process of property, one should take refuge in me, guided by the feeling that there is no other option, as explained above. Knowing me to be Madhava, the Lord of Lakshmi, Madhava, right? Thus, resting in me, one attains fulfillment of the goal. The Bhagavan Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, has thus declared in the Ramayana and in the Mahabharata the following, right? So here he's giving the 2 Charama slokas from Ramacharama sloka, which is Sakrideva Prapannaya Tavasmiti Chayachite Abhayam Sarvabhutebhyo Dadam Yetad Vratam Mama, and Bhagavad Gita, which is in Mahabharata, chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 66, Sarvadharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarvapapebhyo Mokshishimi Masajaha. And he's giving those both in order here. To one who has sought protection of me only once and has implored me, saying, I am yours, I offer protection from the fear of all beings. This is my vow. Forsaking all self-initiated means of liberation, dharmas, come to me alone for shelter. I shall liberate you from all your karmic reactions. Do not grieve. Bhagavad Gita 1866. So that's from Ramayana and Gita. Parashara, who came to know the truth regarding the deity through the boon of Vashishta, has also declared as follows in the Vishnu Purana. Quote, one will continue to experience affliction and desire, delusion and misery until one takes refuge of you, O Vishnu, right? The destroyer of all sins. O messengers of Yama. Father, this may be a quotation from somewhere else. It might be from Vishnu Purana, or it might be from Bhagavatam. Keep away from those sinless beings who say the lotus-eyed Vasudeva, Vishnu, the pervader of the universe, supporter of the earth, the unchangeable one, the bearer of the conch and discus, be our refuge. So those persons who are surrendered to the Lord, the Yamadutas, or the messengers of Yama, are told in this prayer to stay away from those persons. So just as in the story of the Ajamila, which comes in the Bhagavatam, may also be in the Vishnu Purana, is that there was a person who at the time of death remembered the Lord as Narayana, and the Lord saved him, even though he was an extremely sinful person. So while stating the duties of the four castes, varnas, and the four orders of life, ashrama, the sage Manu, that's a reference to Manusamhita or Manusmriti, right, has also referred to the glory of sannyasa or self-surrender, sannyasa, nyasa, parpati, sharanagati, all synonyms, right, under the heading of the worship of Narayana. So after this, he may be giving a quotation from Manusmriti. I'm not sure what the next quotation is from. If you have no dispute with that being who lives in your own heart, who is the Yama, meaning the controller of the senses from within, who dwells in Vivishwan, the sun, Surya Narayana, who is the Raja, the ruler, go not to the Ganges nor to Kurukshetra. Okay, so this is a quotation. Dwelling in the heart does not primarily pertain to Yama, the god of death, the lord of the southern direction, but to him, the ruler of all beings, who has entered into them, controls them all. So this is the explanation of the previous sentence. Who is hidden even in the self, or the Atman, and is death even unto the god of death. Hence, he who abides in the heart, and to have no dispute with him, who is the supreme ruler of all, and lives in the disk of the sun, is to surrender oneself to his feet. So this is an explanation, commentary on the last sentence. Whoever conceives of the self differently from what it really is a great sinner, verily a thief who has stolen the self, the Atman. Right? So the self is the property of the Lord, belongs to the Lord. And therefore, if you consider yourself to be your own, you are considered to have stolen the self from the Lord, because it's the Lord's property. So your idea is that you've stolen it from the Lord. And he's considered to be a great sinner, a thief, stealing the self from the Lord, who it properly belongs to. Therefore, even the tirthas, holy places, are purified by those who have taken refuge with the Lord, who is the ruler of all and abides in the hearts of all, as Paramatman, as the supersoul, as the indwelling Lord. This idea has been expressed in diverse ways by Shonaka, and we'll learn about Shonaka in the footnote 14, and other great sages. O king, you may continue to visit tirthas, holy places, until your mind becomes devoted to Vishnu. In other words, the idea that Shonaka and other great sages, the idea here is that you should continue going to holy places, but until you get devotion to Vishnu, until you get devoted to the Lord. When you get devoted to the Lord, there's no need for that. Isn't this point a subtle difference between the process of Atmanivedana and Prapati? Okay, we could discuss in a minute. We're almost finished here. So, O mighty ruler, devotees like you, who are themselves become sacred, sanctify the Tirthas through the mace-bearing Vishnu residing within themselves. This is enough scriptural testimony for Prapati. Shonaka and Vyasa have respectively declared thus in the Vishnu Dharma and the Mahabharata. Okay, so this seems to be, okay, so these quotes are quotes from the Vishnu Dharma and the Mahabharata. You have passed through the succession of many births, considering well any one of them resort to taking of refuge, O Bharata, you who are afraid of falling, abandon every other project and devote your all your heart to Narayana. So Shonaka here in footnote 14, the author of this work quotes chiefly from the following authorities: the Vedas, the Smritis, especially Manu, Mahabharata of Vyasa, Vishnu Purana of Parashara, who is the father of Vyasa, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, and Vishnu Dharma of Shonaka, Sri Bhagavata, right? So the Bhagavad Purana, and occasionally Varaha Purana, and largely the Shastras of Panchratra Agama. So now we come up to the nature of property. So I think we'll just leave it there right now. So what point did you want to say about, which was the point? Let's have a look
The
at it
point
again.
about stealing the self, one who's the thief of the self, because obviously the Atman belongs to the Lord. So isn't it that as Atma Nivedanam is part of the Navada Bhakti process, and Atma Nivedanam, you could say, is the closest to Prapati, but there's still that very slight subtle difference because of one being the process of Bhakti Yoga, where Bhakti Yoga is the means, and that's a part of Bhakti Yoga, to whereas Prapati alone solely is the means. So therefore, if you say Atma Nivedana there, that one is, the difference is that when one thinks that he belongs to him oneself and offering that oneself to the Lord as as that becomes the mean. Basically, they say in property is the means there, whereas in the process of property, we understand that the Lord alone is the means. Is that the subtle difference? You would agree?
Well, this point in Sloka 39, whoever conceives of the self differently from what it is a great sinner and verily a thief who has stolen the self. So if a thief steals a jewel or steals something valuable and then keeps it and then offers it back even to the person that it belongs to, rightly, like that, this is not the way. This is the idea in sadhana bhakti. In sadhana bhakti, the surrender is surrender your soul, and by surrendering your soul, that is a means to liberation. So that idea would be that we own the soul, we are the soul, and we own the soul, and therefore we can offer it to God as a means of liberation, like a jewel thief offering a jewel back to the owner. But the rightful owner of the jewel is the owner. So the idea, you're right. What you're saying is exactly right. Is the idea is that when property is a separate means, right, the Lord himself is the only means, and therefore we can, at that point, we don't need to offer the soul. The soul already belongs to God. So it's not a matter of offering the soul, although there was the analogy of offering the soul as a offering in the oblation. But we understand that oblation, the soul in that oblation, is none other than a part of the Lord also, right? That so if the knowledge is there that the oblation is part of the fire, right? Anyway, then it's not a matter of off. It's not the offering isn't done with the mentality that I have something separate which is offered in, right? It's not separate, and so therefore, when property is independent, the Lord is the means, and that tiny bit of ego by which we think that we have the possession of the soul and we can offer that to God, it has to also be given up. So that's the point of the Tangalites. That's the point of the Southern Acharyas usually, to point that out. He's pointing it out he's pointing it out here in this part 39, but he hasn't taken it to the ultimate degree of because in other places he says it could be in coordination with other means like that. So he hasn't fully taken it to its logical conclusion. So I agree. So that's a difference. That is the difference between Atmanivedanam and Prapatti. Atmanivedanam is part of sadhana bhakti, and it involves that slight tinge of ego that I am the soul and I have the ability to offer my soul to God like that. But actually, this is not a fact. The soul belongs to God. It's not the jewel never belongs to the thief. The jewel always belongs to the owner. And therefore it's only the ignorance of the thief thinking that he can offer the jewel back to the owner.
And the two types of bhakti,
I agree.
And the two types of bhakti is sadhana bhakti and sadhyo bhakti, which is described where sadhyo bhakti is the goal as well as the Lord, basically, in one sense. Because
it's bhakti as a goal. Bhakti as a goal. So it means kainkariya. It means service. Ultimately, what we do is service to God. We're serving Him. We're following His orders, and we're trying to please Him. What He wants. We have to do what He wants. Sadhya bhakti.
Okay.
Yeah. So when Ramanuja talks about bhakti, it's to be understood as. And when all the acharyas talk about bhakti, it's to be understood that if we do sharanagati, if we do prapatti, right, we're letting the Lord take care of the goal of the end result, and we're just going about our business serving Him. That's all, because that's our true business. Because that's our true nature. The nature of the soul is to serve only God, to serve God, and to serve Him only, and to serve Him always.
Exclusivity. Ukara.
Yeah. I find that this particular version that we're using of Prapanna Parijata is it could be enhanced with the quotations more clearly labeled.
Yeah.
Om Namo Narayanaaya